Alright, how's it going, guys? Today we're going to be doing another Nomad survival guide, and today's guide is going to be on soul farming. So this is an idea that was given to me by someone on the forums. They were talking about how gemstones, we kind of got it figured out now, but souls are something that, well, I don't think a lot of people think about having to farm them in particular. It's definitely something, like a resource that you're going to need a lot of. So I just went ahead and been doing a couple runs the last couple of days, trying to figure out what would be the best way to farm souls as fast as possible. So I've been trying out all the maps and trying out different combinations of classes and map modifiers and things like that. And I think I've pretty much figured out what is going to consistently be the best way for you to get as many souls as possible. So if you can't tell right now, I'm actually playing on the first challenge of the second map. This was actually going to be my final test, just to make sure that there's not any increased mob density here. But basically, what you're going to want to do is you're going to be playing... Actually, I'll start with the character. So, character, you're going to want to go the Knight. The Knight, the reason you're going to be going this character is because his ability to draw in enemies towards you, and you're also able to get more enemies clumped around you at the same time. This is going to increase the amount of mobs that are dying and increase the amount of mobs that are being spawned. So for class, you're going to want to always go Knight. In regards to heritage, you can play it a couple different ways. I tried out both Nomad and Poxbringer. Nomad, so you have the extra rolls, so you can get the weapon skills and the passives that we're looking for. And Poxbringer, because Poxbringer actually works really well with Knight now that Knight has the knockback, as well as Poxbringer is really good with the Death Sting passive, which is what most builds are evolving around right now if you're trying to kill things as quickly as possible. So that's what I would go for on heritage. In regards to map and map modifiers, I wanted to test out just to make sure that this challenge didn't have any increased mob density, which it doesn't seem like it does. I'm on track for exactly what I get normally. So you could play the second map. In regards to map modifier, I would put on 300% movement speed for the enemies, so things are able to get to you a little bit faster, and that would be the only map modifier. You're always going to be playing on the Crossroads. The Crossroads seems to have the highest mob density. The first map is nowhere close. The third map gets around 10,000 to 11,000 souls a run, but it just doesn't match to what the Crossroads is, which is really funny, because this is not the last map. You'd assume that there's a higher mob density than the last map, and it's just not true. The HP is probably a little bit different, but anyways, so you're going to be playing the Crossroads with 300% enemy movement speed. In regards to weapon skills and weapon passives, there's only a couple things that I would say are like required to make it go as fast as possible. So like I said earlier, Death Sting is going to be one of the most important things that you get here. Death Sting is the passive that lets you one-shot mobs. You have at level 10 a 15% chance to one-shot mobs, and so this is definitely something you can play around really easily because it doesn't require like high damage. You just need weapons that proc as often as possible. But we'll stick with passives currently. So evasion would be the second passive that I almost require. That's going to be miniaturize. Miniaturize increases your evasion and decreases your character size. So that's really good when you're pulling all these mobs towards you because you are going to be swamped. And while you're swamped, there is a chance that you could die. It's very unlikely, especially without any map modifiers, just playing the game default. So I wouldn't worry too much about it, but those two I would say are required. I would recommend getting SP regen to level 10 also, so that you could be spamming your ability as often as possible. That's going to bring you more mobs. And then things like item pickup, study, HP regen, defense, those are all helpful but not required basically. But if they pop up in your store and say you're playing Poxbringer, for example, I'd recommend picking them up so you can save some rerolls, basically. Unless you're playing the Nomad where you have a ton of extra rerolls, which I always recommend because the Nomad's just the best class in the game in regards to heritages. The extra rerolls really help you buckle down on exactly what you want from your weapon skills and stuff like that. But that's it for passives. And then in regards to weapon skills, the only ones that I say are going to help the most are going to be things like Colorless Glyph and Purifying Circle. The reason being, they proc the most out of most of the weapon abilities. The only thing that might proc more is going to be Infernal Ray, but it's not as consistent in regards to how it aims, basically. Unless you get it to level 10, then it's pretty consistent, but both Colorless Glyph and Purifying Circle are going to proc as often as they possibly can. Every single time they proc, there's a chance to one-shot the monsters with Death Sting, and that's basically how this whole build revolves around. It's just procking as much as possible so that you have a chance to use the Death Sting passive, and for the most part you'll get them in the first or like second. It's kind of ridiculous how often you actually proc those and one-shot the mobs. Anything else, you can kind of pick up whatever you want. I've done this a couple different ways where I just buckle down specifically on Purifying Circle and Colorless Glyph, and then maybe like Ascension for the extra SP regen. But I've also done where I grab every single weapon skill, because it's not about how much damage you do, so you can leave everything at level 1 if you want to. It's just about making sure you are hitting things as often as possible. So by having every single weapon skill, I mean, you're going to be hitting a lot of things. It's not going to do a lot of damage, but that's not the point. And then in regards to map mechanics and the bosses, depending on how you build, basically, is how you're going to want to play around these. And the nice thing about Death Sting is that that passive actually works on the map items. So Crystal Chests, the portal, for example, on the Crossroads map, which is the map we're playing on, and the red crystals on the third map, those are all technically mobs. They're just classified as monsters. So Death Sting works on them, so you can one-shot them. It's kind of ridiculous. So those die very quickly. It's not something you have to worry about. Bosses, this comes down to what weapon skills you pick up. If you're just not really paying a lot of attention and you're just going like whatever weapon skills, the bosses will die a little slower with the knight. So you might want to pick up like Fireball or Magic Missile or Icicle Barrage, those directional abilities that either target the thing that is closest to them or in the direction you're facing, and just level them up a little bit. Make sure that like it gets past level 5 or 6, and then you'll be able to clear the bosses out really quickly. If you're playing Poxbringer, however, Poxbringer is a great bossing heritage, and you do a ton of damage over time with the additional stacking from every single time you hit something. So if you're playing Poxbringer, I wouldn't worry about what weapon skills you have, but if you're playing Nomad, maybe pick up Fireball or Magic Missile or Icicle Barrage, just to kill things a little bit easier. And then lastly, in regards to relics, I would just go and, if you have the extra rerolls from Nomad, look for Colorless Glyph so you could double the size. It's just really, really strong because you have a larger AoE, so you're going to have more procs on killing monsters, basically. Other than that, relic, grab whatever you want. Things that double size like Energy Wave and Icicle Barrage and Fireball, those are all really good because then it's going to hit more enemies, but it's not the biggest deal in the world. So in total, though, consistently over about 20 runs running the same thing on the Crossroads, you average around 15 to 16,000 souls per run. Between this map and the third map you get around 10 to 11,000 with the same build type and the same modifiers. And then Dry Marsh, we won't even talk about. The mob density is just so much lower, which is it should be. It's the first map. So if you're comfortable with this type of build, I would definitely go ahead and do this on the Crossroads. You can also, if you aren't super comfortable with the Knight, you can play the Crusader. And if you play the Crusader with 300% speed from the enemies, you can average out around 12 to 13,000 souls per run on the second map. So if you feel more comfortable playing the Crusader, go ahead and do that. The build is the same, but the Crusader has that built-in aura and the ability that knocks things back, so you're a little bit safer. But other than that, I would definitely go try this out if you're trying to farm souls up for your pets or any other thing you need to purchase. I will probably end up making a guide for coins, just because I know there's some players that are still starting out that farming coins is really important if you don't have all the upgrades. So I'm going to go ahead and do that sometime this week. But as always, guys, thank you so much for stopping by. Thank you for all of the subs and the views. I really appreciate it. And until next time, I will see you on the next video.